Islam and greetings. Princeanaelbey, Divine Prince and Supreme Grand Sheik of the Moorish Science Temple of America through Temple Alhambra. Before I get into this session, I will remind you that these prints are available. It is a print of the greatest crime never investigated. It is yours for $20. It will come in a glossy print suitable for framing at PayPal, Princeanaelbey YouTube. That's www.paypal.me/Princeanaelbey YouTube. And this will be yours. The PayPal account information and everything else will be in the description. Today, I was horrified. I was horrified because what I learned today was that the Democrats are holding that carrot of reparations for slavery. They are holding it out in front of the United States-made Negro once again. After all, it is voting season. What disturbed me was the actor Danny Glover and Senator Cory Booker were among the witnesses at this congressional hearing. Now, the slavery reparations bill was debated in the House somewhere around June 18th or something of 2019. Danny Glover and Senator Cory Booker were among the witnesses at the congressional hearing. Now, Danny spoke of the long struggle for reparations. This is why people need to withhold their votes until the legislature produces the original organic Constitution for the United States. Mr. Glover, let me inform you that in Abraham Lincoln's 13th Amendment with the 20 sections, what you spoke of that black people are struggling for, it was already given. The slaves, some of them, some of the freed slaves, they got their 40 acres and a mule. They were also paid for their labors. And it had nothing to do with reparations, but it had everything to do with the biblical Mosaic code that the church used to enslave the Moors here. And the Mosaic code, which the church used to enslave the Moors when the East Indian Trading Company began the slave trade. And words mean what they mean. The slave trade had nothing to do with kidnapping of Southeast Africans from Southeast Africa. That is not a trade. It's called a kidnapping. What's the matter with you? A trade is when you give something to someone and they give you something. That is what happened to the Moors who were here when the East Indian Trading Company began the American slave trade. didn't have a damn thing to do with kidnapped victims from Southeast Africa. It was the Moors here who were first enslaved. And they were traded from one part of this land to another. That is what the slave trade actually was, Mr. Glover. It had nothing to do with kidnapped victims from Southeast Africa. Now, the 13th Amendment with 20 sections, not only did it provide for compensation, not only did it do that, it did much more. It did much more. And as I listened to Senator Cory Booker, all I heard was Martin Luther coonery. Every sentence that came out of the senator's mouth was how the Black and African American have been victimized and victims their entire existence. If Danny Glover is truly the great-grandson of an actual African slave, he cannot be a U.S. citizen. The Constitution, you see, for the United States, it expressly forbids it. And because I have seen the actual organic Constitution for the United States, what it states is this, and I quote, "No descendant of an African slave can ever become a U.S. citizen." So, Mr. Glover, I would recheck your bloodline and your descendancy before you make a statement like that. Because when the organic Constitution for the United States is revealed, before that is revealed, you need to retract that statement that you are the great-grandson of an African slave. Because once that document is revealed, and your bloodline traces you back to some Southeast African kidnap victim, you are not a U.S. citizen. And there will be problems for you, Mr. Glover. There will be problems for you. You have enough problems calling yourself Black and African American. Now, not only are you Black, but you are also now the grandson of an African kidnap victim who was held as a slave. You are getting further and further away from who you truly are. Sitting before Congress, espousing the virtues of being Black and African American in America, and you want money because you are Black. Mr. Glover, you're an intelligent man. You're an intelligent man. One of the witnesses spoke, and he quoted one of the legislators who, in effect, told him or said to him, "Why do people of today owe you for something that happened 150 years ago?" That's logic. That's nothing but pure logic. And the fact that some of those legislators know that you did not come from Southeast Africa. They know. And they all know where the organic Constitution for the United States is. They all know where it is. If you were to actually see the organic Constitution, you will see Abraham Lincoln's 13th Amendment with the 20 sections, which he and his partners had to sneak into the congressional record during the Christmas break. That is how that amendment got passed. Former slaves were given 40 acres and a mule. They were given money. They were given goods. Again, on account of Mosaic law, which is the only law that the Christian colonists could apply for the enslavement of Moors and the transferring of these Moors from one place in this land to another, such as from Pennsylvania down to Macon, Georgia, or Biloxi, Mississippi. And this was long before the cargo ships left here going to Southeast Africa. We were the first slaves in this land. We were the first slaves in this land. We came to be that because of one of my uncles, Suleiman. He was the Sultan at that time because Uncle Sidi had changed forms. And Thomas Jefferson, John Adams, Thomas Barclay, and they had to take Princeanaelbey with them, also known as Benjamin Franklin. Had to take him with them because he was Moor. And they told Uncle Suleiman, we have rich soil, ain't got no gold or silver mines. We just don't have enough people to work the land. And it was my Uncle Suleiman, the Sultan, who did not want the responsibility of holding an empire together. So he settled for a sultanate. And it was he who told Jefferson and the founding fathers, take those Moors over there. They're not doing anything anyway. And that is when the slave trade actually began, Mr. Glover, Mr. Booker. That is when the slave trade actually began. The slave trade was comprised of a few elements. One of those elements, which is still used today when kicking in the doors of innocent Americans and murdering them in their homes because you wear a costume. At around 3:30, 3:45, which is the time that these raids occur, they still use that timetable. And there's a psychological reason that they use that timetable. There's a reason that they use that. It's about 3:30, 3:45 in the morning. Some Moorish family with 600 acres up in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, which is Adelphi. It's called Pennsylvania now. Well, they would hear the noise, come downstairs, and they would see 3, 4 Europeans with shotguns and rifles on them. That family would then be hustled into the back of a wagon with a sack on their heads. And except for eating, bathroom breaks, etc., on their journey, they were taken from their home in 600 acres in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. When those hoods came off their heads, they were in Biloxi, Mississippi. And they were told that some other European, this is your new master. Now, the plantation homes that you've never seen being built in any Civil War movie or any period piece around that period, you've never seen those homes constructed. Do you know why? Because the Moors who actually owned those plantations, they built them generations before the European got here. That is why you will never see a Civil War period piece, or before the Civil War, where they're actually building those plantation houses. They were already there. And the Moors who owned them, they wound up on plantations in Georgia, Arkansas, and other places. That was the slave trade, where they traded people from one part of America to another. Words mean what they mean. A trade is just that. And kidnapping is just that. It is the 4th degree. It's the 4th degree. But because your representatives are keeping the organic constitution from you. Every time you open your mouth, you espouse nothing more than more ignorance, which lets them know that their plans and their programs are working because you know nothing. Make them bring out the organic constitution. Do it before you go to the polls. Do it before you go to the polls. Then you can take your power as the people back. When you make them do their jobs, make them show you the law. The Constitution of the United States is not the law. Not the law. It's just it's a book of acts. It's acts. And that is not the Constitution for the United States. The Constitution of the United States is the book of Acts. May as well put it in the Bible. It's the book of Acts. There's no law there. The 13th to the 14th and 15th Amendment in the Constitution of the United States, they are known as the 3 dead badges of law. Number 1, the 13th Amendment is incomplete. It only has 2 sections. It is missing 18 sections. The 14th Amendment, well, that gives you civil rights. The King had people being blasted with water hoses, having German shepherds sicked on them, getting their heads peeled at a Woolworths counter, in order to demonstrate. Check this now. I want you to tell me how much sense this makes. And it also happened. It is a part of Negro history. King took these people into a Woolworths diner, and they sat there being ignored. But they weren't going to move until that white man paid them enough attention to take their money and continue his commercial enterprise. He got those people jacked up for the right to hand over their money to someone who doesn't want their business. Civil rights. He was fighting for civil rights. All he had to do was read the 14th Amendment. It gives you civil rights. That is why it is one of the 3 dead badges of law. Because you see, you don't need civil rights. What you need are what is guaranteed to you in the Constitution for the United States, which are your inalienable rights. You don't want no goddamn civil rights. You want your God-given rights. And begging for reparations is not the way to obtain them. Because while you beg for reparations, and when you have well-known speakers for this bullshit and nonsense, speaking up for it, what you don't understand is while these ignorant people, when they are ignorant, and I don't mean it as a derivation, they simply don't know. They are ignorant of the truth. This is the age of Aquarius, where all that was hidden will now be revealed. Will now be revealed. This that you are living is what the Christian Bible put way in the back of its book as Revelations. You are living the revelation. That which was hidden will now be revealed. It is because you are entering a new age. Better proof of this could not be seen than in your holy Bibles. You Moriscos, check your Bibles. going to give you Morisco's a little assignment. And you already know that Morisco is a Christianized Moor. You don't know you are Moor. You actually think, you're a slave of Julius Caesar, a.k.a. Jesus the Christ. And so that's what you actually think you are. However, because you are Moor and don't know it, these are the things that keep you ignorant. And so, what people by and large do not understand about begging for reparations is you are continuing to tell the United States Corporation that you are every bit the black man and African American that they sell to the world. That they sell to the world. You don't need reparations. You don't need civil rights. And the 15th Amendment, the reason that it's one of the 3 dead badges of law is it flies in the face of the organic 5th Amendment in the Constitution for the United States. The Constitution that you all are being shown, it was made up and written in 1871. And that is when it was forced on the people. And it was at about that same time. No, it was after, because I have seen the Organic Constitution. It was after that, way after that, like past the 1960s, when they put the Organic Constitution for the United States to sleep. It did this at the behest of the church in order to hide the Constitution so that the principle of Columbia can continue. Now, Columbia, again, that was the attack word for the church when it began its all-out assault on Greater Mauritania and the Empire of Morocco here in Northwest Africa. The word was Columbia. That was the attack word. And Columbia means the great experiment or the big idea. So, Greater Mauritania and the Union States of Al Morocco became a goddamn petri dish for the church. For the church. Columbia means the great experiment. Do you think that it is all a coincidence that anything that you, check that everything that you see going on in this land now, do you think all of this is a coincidence? Do you? I will tell you again. And this goes for you amalgamated Moors as well. Because you are in America. You are not a stater. You are not a United Stater. You are an American. The United States is only the Eastern Seaboard. Its home office is Washington in the District of Criminality. Check that. The District of Columbia. That is its home office. And the United States is only the original 13 colonies. It does not include all lands from the Atlantic to the Pacific. It absolutely does not. Because everything west of Jersey is America. If it is not within the District of Columbia, that's America. And the District of Columbia nor the United States has any jurisdiction in America. Its only jurisdiction is the United States. You all need to make those goddamn politicians unask your real constitution, because that is what you will be living by. Instead of living in a democratic state that was made up because of church enslavement. Remember, Caesar said when he became Jesus the Christ, while he was Jesus the Christ, what Julius Caesar said was Rome will rule for 10,000 years. Well, that can never happen now, because Rome has been torn down 3 times, and it's about to go down for the 4th time. And yet, the church still doesn't get it. The church still doesn't get it. But it has always been the greatest enemy we have ever had, ever since the inception of Christianity. We were here first. Our religion is the first. And because the church has come lately, it is envious of the Hebrew religion and Islamism. And so it has been on a never-ending campaign to destroy the Moors, Imperial Morocco, and anything that will remind Rome that it is still number 2. It cannot have that. And when Caesar said Rome will rule for 10,000 years, he actually meant it. And those who sit on the throne of St. Peter in Rome, they are continuing the legacy as set forth by the first God-man, Julius Caesar, a.k.a. Jesus the Christ. That's why Pope Francis, he didn't come here, did he, when he went down to South America to apologize for the church sending the conquistadors to rack and ruin the Mayan and Incan and Aztec civilizations. He went down there and apologized to them. But he damn sure didn't stop here and apologize to the Moors, did he? Making up names like Christopher Columbus in order to get the Italians in on it. That was the only reason that fictitious individual, Christopher Columbus, was even brought up. Because the church was actually organizing Europe after we had brought it out of darkness. The church wanted to put it back in darkness. And the provinces in what is now known as Italy, because it has not always been called Italy. Florence was Florence, Venice was Venice, Rome was Rome, etc. There was no Italy. There's no Italy. But getting back to being United States-made Negroes, as you continue to go before the legislature and argue a case for being a Negro, a United States-made black man, before going to Congress to argue why you are such a thing. Because when you do that, and the subject is reparations, all you're saying is, give me because I'm black. If Mr. Glover had seen the organic Constitution for the United States, he would have seen where his great-grandfather was compensated by Lincoln. But because they kept that from him, he does not know. And he is sitting before the legislature in all of his black ignorance. And those amalgamated Moorish legislatures sitting up there, they're not showing it, but many of them are smiling inside, because all they are getting is a barometric reading on just how far this program and the plan has gone. You have actors like the distinguished Danny Glover sitting before the House talking about some goddamn reparations. talking about some goddamn reparations. Now, I'm sure that Mr. Glover, being the celebrity that he is, I'm sure he has a staff. Mr. Glover, have your staff look up the word reparations. Have them learn how a nation acquires reparations. Have them teach you what reparations are. I'm sure you took your knowledge of what you knew to Capitol Hill. I was embarrassed for you. And I was only embarrassed for you because what I knew was you didn't know. You didn't know. And you thought you were doing the right thing. You thought you were doing a good thing. Well, you weren't in either case, Mr. Glover. The only thing you did was demonstrate just how little you do know about yourself. And it is probably because you too called yourself Black and African American. In that case, I am not surprised that you do call yourself by those infamous labels. And so I really don't expect you to know much about yourself if you call yourself by those labels. Prayerfully, this will give you some insight into what is and is not where reparations are concerned, where you yourself, Mr. Glover, and any other American watching this, insight into who you are. Because, you see, Mr. Glover, now, since you have been before the legislature, do you understand, Mr. Glover, that that footage of you in the Capitol building is now going to go under Black history, African American history? And it is because of the nature of what you are doing. It is due to the nature of what you are doing. The nature of what you are doing is you are confirming that you are a goddamn victim, that you want and need more money to be a consumer, that you have never been treated fairly throughout your entire existence. And now you want to be paid for what you think were your ancestors held in bondage. You see, because I know you know none of these things, Mr. Glover, and most of America. This is why you want to let the issue of reparations die. Gather up some pride in yourself. Gather up some pride as yourselves, as a race of people. That Martin Luther King bullshit, you know why in the previous video when I was explaining to you about how the only thing that the United States still manufactures is the American-made Black man and the African American. You know why I said they come in cans? And they are put together at the chicanery. The chicanery. It's because CAN is an acronym. And Black people come in cans. And so do African Americans. CAN stands for coon-ass niggas. Coon-ass niggas. That's why Black people and African Americans come in a can. And when the cannery spits them out, boxes them up, and off to market. Mr. Glover, you are not Black. nor are you an African American. Your great-grandfather was Moor, just like you are. Because if you successfully and correctly trace your bloodline, you ain't no son of no goddamn African kidnap victim. You are Moor. You are Moor. You see. And that's who you are. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. And again, if you are interested in acquiring a print of the greatest crime never investigated, my PayPal information will be in the description box. And I really didn't want to revisit this reparations thing again. Simply had no choice when I saw what happened on the Hill. It is disgusting. It is also a truth of the Asiatic Muslim here in Northwest Africa in his own home. That is disgusting. You want to be everything but what you are, and you do everything to prove that you are that which you are labeled. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe. I bid you peace.